You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, as always, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, Week 15, we're rounding third base. Goes by quick. Got to embrace it. Mr. Harris, what is good tonight in New Mexico, sir?
It's frosty here, yet somehow I believe it's frostier where you are. So I'll not complain nor whine. I know in Kyle's case, I guess everything's good around there when the Browns The Browns didn't have a great finish, but it was a great game. What do you guys think of the Monday night game, Kyle?
I mean, I truly think, I'm in a group chat with, truly, I don't want to call them meathead, but just, they love Browns football. That's all they care about. They're, into fantasy, but in the way that a casual person is. And honestly, I was happy for them that they were very happy with the overall game. The Browns, I think they did what you want them to do. I don't think with their defense right now, you expect them to go out and stop Lamar Jackson. Maybe a little bit more than they did. But the upside is that their offense hung with, and not only they hang with, but they put up big boy points and yards against one of the 5 or so best defenses in the league. And I think that's what you need to be going into the playoffs is every single year for the most part. I think going forward, we're going to see the best teams in the NFL be the offensive powerhouses. And are the Browns an offensive powerhouse? No, but they showed that they can, on a single game, compete with offensive powerhouses, and that's going to be the key to winning in the NFL. And they have that key, at least in their range of outcomes.
As long as there is no rain, wind, or otherwise inclement conditions, it turns out that Baker Mayfield can play quarterback, but that rushing attack will carry them a long way. I go to Justin for the more insightful, in-depth analysis. Poop or cramps, Justin, for Lamar Jackson?
Well, I think there's something on the line, right? They got to win out, and he's looked like the guy that we hoped that he would. And
Justin, poop or cramps? That's all we want to know.
Simple question, Justin.
Yeah,
was he pooping or was it cramps?
Oh, I think he shit himself. But I mean, we all have. He gambled. He gambled and he lost, but he didn't gamble and lose once he got to the second level.
This is true. It was a very good game for all involved. All right, we got some issues, and I think it is exciting a game as we've seen on a Monday night since that epic Rams Chiefs game. Was that last year or the year before? I can't even remember anymore. It was epic. Anyhow, Ronald Jones came into the week with a busted up pinky finger, had the pin inserted on Tuesday. Now it seems to be moved, goes on the COVID reserve COVID list. Don't know if he's a close contact or if he tested positive. If it's a close contact, I think I have this right. It's 5 days. This would be cutting it pretty close. Should we just say that he's not going to play yet, Justin?
I don't think he's going to play. No, he had the finger. He's coming off of that. I think the more interesting question is who is going to be the running back, right? Leonard Fournette sat last week. I mean, they're going to roll out Shady. You got to have some semblance of a running game there. But as far as Ronald Jones tonight, which is the semblance of a rushing attack in Tampa Bay, no. So I think the better question is who is going to kind of fill that void, right?
Yeah. I think if Leonard Fournette sounds like the guy that'll be back out of the doghouse, perhaps. If there is no Ronald Jones, that would be great. And we'll see. It was kind of interesting. Something happened there. I don't know what. Was talking to Rick Stroud from the Tampa Bay Times on Tuesday evening, and he used the word doghouse unbidden. So I'm guessing there's something we have not quite heard just yet, and maybe never will. Christian McCaffrey, Kyle, out again this week. It seems like DJ Moore back for the Panthers. Saturday night game against the Packers. Mike Davis primed for another maybe less than disappointing showing like we saw this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing a pretty significant portion of the Christian McCaffrey role. They're not projected to score a ton of points and they're underdogs, but that's never hurt Christian McCaffrey, so why would it hurt 3/4 of Christian McCaffrey? Yeah, another good game, and basically our median projection on Mike Davis whenever McCaffrey's out is they should all be good games.
Yeah, I think so too. The 49ers of Arizona 49ers or San Francisco 49ers who play now in Arizona. Deebo Samuel done for the year. Damn it. The hamstring issue. George Kittle designated to return. We don't know that he will. Whether he does or not, Tell me why Brandon Ayuk is so amazing.
Well, he is the real deal for certain, and he was the real deal for the short time that Deebo Samuel was on the field as well. I was looking at the numbers earlier. Since week 7, he's averaged over 21 PPR points a game. I mean, we're talking 25, 20, 21. So he's getting the football, and he's getting targeted 9 to 10 times every single week. The matchup is juicy, and in fact, he's probably pound for pound one of my favorite wide receivers on the main slate this week. So he's the real deal. And you know something, in a tough NFC West, they need all the firepower they can get, and I think he's one of these rookies where there was some buzz about him after they drafted him, but this is a deep class, as we know. He kind of went under the radar, but he is legit, and he's as good as any rookie wide receiver in this class, as far as I'm concerned.
Kyle, Drew Brees designated to return. It seems like, with the loss, maybe there's a little bit of extra scrutiny on Taysom Hill. I know Sean Payton mentioned on an NFL media podcast, brought up kind of unbidden the notion that Jameis Winston was in the mix for quarterback of the future. I don't know. What does all this mean? First of all, we'll see if Brees comes back or not this week. What's your take on the quarterback of the future situation? What has Taysom Hill shown you?
I actually am kind of impressed with what Taysom Hill has done, specifically as a passer. His efficiency numbers haven't been bad as a passer, and he was downright bad in college. When you adjust for the fact that college quarterbacks, we get guys throwing for just hilarious comical numbers. His college numbers through a large sample were not good. He didn't look like a great college passer, and then you expect can he go to the NFL level and improve not only enough to be a good college passer, but then to exceed the expectations of the NFL? I was so down on him, and I was wrong, at least in a tiny sample, sure. But I feel like already I have enough information to say he's impressed me as a passer. My only problem is that I am almost always of the opinion that now that we have, maybe it's just Patrick Mahomes, but now that we have Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott when healthy, Josh Allen, you are going to need a guy like that to compete with them. And I don't think Taysom Hill is that. So I always think that NFL franchises should generally be hyper aggressive, especially at the quarterback position. So do I think he is deserving to be the quarterback of the future? I think there are better outcomes by seeking a different, a college quarterback. But do I think it is the most likely outcome at this point? He played well enough in his starts. They won a majority of their games. He didn't look bad. And most importantly, they didn't give Jameis Winston a chance. Their actions tell us they don't believe Jameis Winston has a chance. They didn't give him a chance. So I'm going to say Taysom Hill will be the starting quarterback, assuming Brees doesn't play next year, and if not, probably the year after that if they're able to hold on to him.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Kyle, I'll touch on some injuries before we get out of here. I know in New England that there are issues there. You follow that team closely. I still have the odds on Trevor Lawrence somehow winding up a Patriot very high. I know I'm only kidding, but only half kidding because Bill Belichick is like a wizard. That aside, assuming I'm totally out of my mind, and I am, admittedly, what's the Patriots plan going forward?
God, I don't know. I think they're a team that is in such a weird position where this happens to a lot of teams where the quarterback of the future doesn't seem to be on the roster. I think given the sample we have on Cam Newton, it doesn't look like he's anything more than a gimmick that can work sometimes, but his passing just seems to be lacking at this point, so it's not him. Jared Stidham, whenever given the chance, loves throwing interceptions and doing nothing more. It's not him, but they're not going to lose enough games to really make a significant run at one of the elite quarterbacks. I think they're a team that's in contention to take a developmental quarterback who could potentially sit behind a veteran for a year or even just a handful of weeks. So I think the quarterback of the future is not on their roster yet and could still be at least a year away from being on their roster if the quarterback doesn't fall to them at the right spot in the draft.
What does Fred Smirla say about this, Justin?
Well, he said that there's going to be a camp battle between Tom Brady and Jared Stidham. He said, look, they got Cam Newton at the veteran base. They got him for a song, essentially. I think it was a show and prove type deal for Newton. It just hasn't transpired. They're an absolute mess. The team as a whole, it speaks to Kyle's point in regards to you're going to have to drop points in the future. And this team is far from. In fact, I would call them a bottom 5 NFL offense at this point in time. They're a hot mess. Belichick seems committed to Cam Newton at this stature. It's probably an ego thing that he's got to let go. But you asked me tonight, I mean, I think you have to see some more of Jarrett Stidham these last few weeks just to make sure he is not that guy. If you asked me 8 months ago, you guys know I thought that he was going to be the follow-up act to Tom Brady. Has not happened when he's had the opportunity. Has he had enough opportunities? I don't think so. I'd give him another shot or two. He just hasn't seized the moment. So Kyle might be right. I mean, they might have to bring somebody in. Economics is a big part of the way the Pats roll, and they do things on the cheap. And I think that they're going to have to open up their wallets. I think that the Trevor Lawrence sweepstake is out of the equation at this point in time, and they haven't tanked. In fact, they were in playoff contention as of last week. So I want to see more Jarrett Stidham as a Pats guy, but they have a lot of work to do, and reality says they're in a lot of trouble for the next few years to come.
I should acknowledge here and now that that I'm only kidding about the Trevor Lawrence to New England. For those of you out there who might be seizing up, I do it so you seize up. It makes people crazy when I say that. So I'll try to dial back on that a little bit. A couple other injury issues of note. Julio Jones, not a lot to return this week. Matthew Stafford, a little beat up as well. Got the rib issue. They're not ruling him out yet, but we could see Chase Daniel in this game this weekend. That won't be great. Daniel Jones added an ankle injury to the hamstring injury. Wasn't especially mobile last week, said the 6 sacks he took against the Arizona Cardinals. Not especially productive either. Wasn't a great game for the Giants offense, but it seems like they're going to try to force him into the fray if at all possible. Alex Smith hopes to play this week. Despite a calf issue, he did not practice to start the week, but it seems like they would much rather him play than Dwayne Haskins Jr., which would be great from a fantasy perspective because I think they're probably right. It would be much better if Alex Smith could play than Dwayne Haskins Jr. All right, a couple other guys coming off the injury list or having the COVID issues going on the COVID list. Marquise Brown, Miles Boykin, James Proche from the Baltimore Ravens. So that's something to watch coming in. I mentioned Ronald Jones going on the list. A few guys coming off the list. Matt Breida's coming off the list. So we'll see what's going on in Miami. They have a lot of injury issues there, but it seems like maybe Salvon Ahmed will be back. Maybe Devontae Parker and Jakeem Grant will be available. So all you Lynn Bowden truthers, look out. I'm sure we're going to hear about that, Justin, in your wide receiver segment. So I'll give you that.
Sure.
Let's dive into the quarterbacks, Justin. Go for the DFS players. This is what it's all about.
All right. I mean, when you look at Patrick Mahomes last week, 3 picks, and he still dropped over 20 DraftKings points. Not going to go there. I think that is the most exciting game on the entire slate. Saints, Chiefs. I'm not going to go there. I think you got to ride the Lamar Jackson wave while it's hot. There is an incentive to win. They want to get into the playoffs. We saw what he did against Cleveland. That's the Lamar Jackson we want to see every week. I mean, he gets to the second level and there's nothing that can be done. I'm going to go ahead and go right there at home against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who cannot contain anybody. 7,500 feels right. And of course, for him to get us there, he has to rush for close to 100 yards and punch 1 or 2 in. He can do that. This is the matchup that he'll probably do it against. Dollar for dollar, I'm looking at Jared Goff at home against the Jets. They're big favorites. The line's right around 16, 17 points. It's pretty easy plug and play for me as far as Goff. You know where the ball's going. It's going to go to Robert Woods. It's going to go to Cooper Kupp. I'm going to use that stack. And now it looks like that they have a bona fide stud in their backfield with Cam Akers, so I will have him in the mix as well. So it's Jackson, it's Goff, and there are a couple cheapos. I don't know why you wouldn't go back to Jalen Hurts, 5,900. Again, the rushing equity, kind of a poor man's Lamar Jackson. The time came, the time was needed. It probably should have happened a few weeks ago. Jalen Hurts might have it, guys. We talked about this last week before we even played. The window of opportunity presented itself. It was a good test against a fantastic Saints defense, and he lived up to the occasion. I don't envision Carson Wentz throwing the ball for the Eagles again. Not with this kid. Obviously, there's polish to be polished. If that makes any sense, which it doesn't.
None.
He's going to be a work in progress. 5,900. I'm all over Jalen Hurts this week. And the last guy I'll talk about is going to be Mitch Trubisky. I think he's another guy where a lot of eyeballs on him. We've gone over what happened a couple of years ago when they signed Mike Glennon and then they moved up to grab Trubisky. He's got to be he's going to be offended to a degree. So the light is on him, especially in a city like Chicago. They want to get into the playoffs as well in the back door. He's looked pretty good over the last couple of games. He's a simple play for me in terms of it's going to be Mitch Trubisky, going to be Allen Robinson, then I'll use a couple pieces on the other side of the ball. 5,500, absolutely love it. So tonight, it's Lamar Jackson, it is Jared Goff, it is Jalen Hurts, and it is Mitchell Trubisky for me. Again, it's only Wednesday, so there are some moving pieces as the week goes on.
Yeah, I don't know if something's the matter here because I tend to think that all of those are reasonable plays. And also, before we get to yours, Kyle, I would like to offer up my apology to Jalen Hurts for being skeptical about his ability to fare well against the New Orleans Saints, although the passing day wasn't amazing, right? It was the rushing that he put together. And Miles Sanders, too. I'm sorry, sir. I disrespected you, and it will not happen again this week. Kyle, quarterbacks, go.
Yeah, I really like Jalen Hurts. Just to pile on to it, I mean, 18 carries last week was top 5 for a single game quarterback since 2000, and it was in his first start. I mean, sure, you could say like, oh, they took some of the easy stuff and didn't make him throw, but is really much going to change from last week to this week? No, I don't think so. I think we're going to see him. He could push for 100 yards again, and any player who's a threat, any quarterback who's a threat at least to go for 100 yards on the ground should be priced higher than he is. Tom Brady, I have been very hamstrung by the fact that I love playing Tom Brady, and even when I'm right, it's very difficult to guess which pass catcher it ends up being. But I'm going to keep going back to it. It's another great spot. Right now he faces Atlanta. Atlanta is allowing the 3rd most passing yards per game. They just lost their running back in Ronald Jones, assumedly. Like, I don't think there's any real scenario in which he plays, I don't believe. So they just lost the running back who they had just showed a massive vote of confidence in. Are they going to be willing to run the ball much, if at all? I doubt it, given that they're already top 5 in pass percentage. The prices on these guys are all so cheap that, sure, like, I could be wrong, and I could pick the wrong stack to go with if, Antonio Brown goes out and scores the touchdown and I play Chris Godwin, egg on my face, whatever. But I do think when you just look at the quarterback and the matchup, the price, the ownership, everything is aligning for Tom Brady to simply be one of the best projected plays again, and he's not being owned like it. Phillip Rivers, like, I feel gross. I'm playing these guys, these dusty old 2008 quarterbacks who haven't played almost at all this season. Phillip Rivers is 11th or better in yards per attempt, adjusted yards per attempt, quarterback rating, EPA per dropback. I mean, he has played incredibly well. His team has a very high implied team total against a pretty soft defense in Houston this week. Nothing is telling me not to play Phillip Rivers other than his age, which would be a stupid thing to try and rely on. Like, of course, it's more exciting to play the young, fun quarterbacks, but
easy now.
No, I'm trying to give you guys this one. As much as I rag on the dusty old quarterbacks, if he's playing well, his team is projected to score a lot of points, there's no reason to not play him. So I think Phillip Rivers is kind of one of the ugliest plays of the slate that you simply have to go to. And last, Taysom Hill. If there's a quarterback I'm playing in Kansas City versus New Orleans, I actually think it might be Taysom Hill if he does get the start. I'd be a little less inclined if Drew Brees does play. I think the rushing upside for Taysom Hill is great. So, we'll know by the time Sunday comes around if you can play Taysom Hill or not. I do think as the cheaper quarterback in the highest scoring game of the week per Vegas, Taysom Hill is interesting.
Yeah, I think the T.Y. Hilton factor for Phillip Rivers cannot be overlooked. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's like and he's playing the Texans, one of his favorite whipping boys, although he likes to whip them a little harder when he's there in Houston as opposed to at home. So interesting. Kyle, you're running back, sir.
Yeah, so at the top you have two choices. You have Dalvin Cook for $9K or Derrick Henry for $9,500. After Dalvin Cook, there's a $1,600 gap to Alvin Kamara. So if you're looking to pay up all the way up, you have essentially two choices. Like, I get it, Derrick Henry is probably in the better spot. His team has a slightly higher implied team total, but he doesn't catch passes. Dalvin Cook does catch passes. Dalvin Cook is $500 cheaper. Dalvin Cook is going to be 10 or more % less popular. I think he could be.
That's like a logical progression. I'm very impressed with that.
It's the small things. I'm taking a slight edge in terms of my odds of having a running back who catches 4 passes for, call it, 40 or 50 yards. I mean, Dalvin Cook has a lot of upside in any individual target. I'm going to take that. I'm going to take the price discount. I'm going to take the ownership discount. All of these things add up. Do I think Derrick Henry outscores him if we play this slate over 100 times on average? Yeah, marginally. I kind of do think he does. But do I think the field is going to be so excited to play D. Hember in the middle of December in a good matchup versus Detroit and completely overlook Dalvin Cook? Yeah, I think there end up being similar plays, and one of them is lower owned. And I'm just always going to pivot to the lower owned guy. even if it is literally December and the man's name is Dehember. Moving down in price, Cam Akers at 6,600. Justin talked about him. 50 carries in the past 2 weeks, averaging over 120 yards just on the ground in the past 2 weeks, and he even leads the Rams in routes run in terms of the running backs, at least, over the past 2 weeks. They spent second-round draft capital on him. He suffered an injury in the middle of the season. He comes back. His volume ramps up. Another one, logical progression. Everything is pointing towards the arrow going straight vertical on Cam Akers. Now he is a massive, massive favorite. It's comical. 17 points versus the Jets? No reason not to just take the free points with someone like Cam Akers. Moving down a little bit, this one feels so bad. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 5,800. I know. I feel the same way. I feel
there were targets though last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. There were 6 targets. He got
16 targets.
16 carries, I believe. He's pushed Le'Veon Bell back to this complete, essentially, Darrell Williams role in his previous few games, despite, of course, one game, technically, he was active and didn't get any carries. We can think of him as functionally inactive for that game. He was dealing with a stomach bug or the flu or something. I'm not going to hold that against him. Outside of that game, he has looked like the lead back for a team with a 27.25 implied team total. And if he scores multiple times, probably stealing at least one of those scores from a Tyreek Hill or a Travis Kelce, who are extremely priced. They need those scores. If I steal them with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm probably disproportionately benefiting compared to the lineups that are playing the other Chiefs options. I think everything lines up for him being a good tournament play. He's not going to hit very often, but it does make some sense. Lastly, Jeff Wilson at 5,100. Only if we don't see Raheem Mostert, but I do think the fact that Jeff Wilson and Mostert split carries already when Mostert came back is kind of an interesting point in favor of Jeff Wilson in general. That Raheem Mostert has looked so good, and they still thought we need to get Jeff Wilson the ball. Well, if Raheem Mostert does end up being out, I think Jeff Wilson as a favorite versus a terrible Dallas run defense at 5,100, he's probably a guy I'm going to have some exposure to.
Quick note on that. Kyle Shanahan said today that he feels like Raheem Mostert should be good to go by the end of the week, but that they will be careful with him. And you be careful with anything going on with that San Francisco running back attack, or you will get your ass Shanahaned to you. He's funny like that. Go, Justin, running backs.
Yeah, I'm not going to go to Derrick Henry. He's a polarizing player. Especially on DraftKings.
Ow!
PPR. Yeah, he's
polarizing in that he runs for a ton of yards and stiff arms everyone in his way.
Yeah.
What?
But Kyle's right. As far as the zero involvement in the passing game, he is touchdown dependent in my opinion. There are games where he's going to have 25 carries for 80 yards and get you nothing. In fact, the first time he played with the Jags, they're playing the Lions this week. But when you look at the game logs and you look at some of the games he's played in, 25 carries, 80 yards, a touchdown at 9,500, you are really aiming for a week similar to last week, which is close to 200 yards and 2 touchdowns with zero involvement in the passing game. It's scary, and I'm not going there. But for other reasons, I hope he does really well. I will not spend 9,500 on Derrick Henry, and I'm not going to go to Dalvin Cook either. There are just some teams that have your number, and the Chicago Bears have Dalvin Cook's number over the last 2-3 seasons. It's just those are the numbers. You get married to them for whatever reason. And I'm not going to go to 9K either for Dalvin Cook. I think there are other plays such as Alvin Kamara in a game script, which should be a close game. 2 of the best teams in the NFL, in my opinion. They finally decided to use Alvin Kamara appropriately last week. The catches were there, and that's what we like to see. The previous couple of weeks, the catches were not there. I blame that on Taysom Hill, and I don't know what Sean Payton was doing. But, when the Saints are successful, it runs through Alvin Kamara. It's just as simple as that. So it's 7,400, eerily similar to Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion, in terms of how he is used, when he is used properly. So I'm going to go to Alvin Kamara in a game that hopefully shoots out. The next guy I'm going to talk about is Cam Akers. This has been a 3-headed monster. Last year, this time, we were worried about Darrell Henderson, and then it was Malcolm Brown and back and forth. I think Akers is the guy. This was a guy that we were talking about right after the draft going, if somebody's going to have an immediate role in a backfield, it's going to be Cam Akers. And when you watched him run last week, he looked like a veteran. Over 30 touches, Kyle's right. You don't even think twice about a play like this. I already mentioned Goff, Woods, and Kupp. I'm going to have an awful lot of Cam Akers week 15, to be sure. I think Miles Sanders is another guy where people are going to think that the Cardinals are, given what they did against the Giants, they're a good defense. They're a middle-of-the-road run defense. I think if Doug Peterson uses Miles Sanders appropriately, which means 15 to 20 touches, he can also get us there. He showed us that against the Saints. And the Saints are as good as it gets against the run. So do it against the Saints, little momentum heading into Arizona. I think it's a great stack idea with Jalen Hurts, maybe Dallas Goedert, and I'll mix Miles Sanders into it and run it back with a DeAndre Hopkins. So I do like Miles Sanders as well. From a projection standpoint, Kenyon Drake is another guy. If you're going to have a Hurts stack, you might use Kenyon Drake. And this is primarily based on his price, which is $5,500. You are paying for volume. When he's healthy, when he's on the field, you can rest assured he's going to get between 20, 25 touches. Not a lot of running backs do that anymore in this game. When Kenyon Drake's on the field, he's going to get the football 20, 25 times. Opportunity presents itself on a run-heavy offense outside of Kyler Murray. So, and the last guy is Jeff Wilson. There's nothing sexy about it. He's projecting well. He's top 10 in as far as projection goes this week. The matchup is as good as it gets against the Dallas Cowboys, so I will go there. Tonight, it is Alvin Kamara, it is Miles Sanders, it is Cam Akers, and I will sprinkle in some Kenyon Drake and Jeff Wilson. And by the way, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, guys, I wrote him up for Football Diehards. He's not a digging the crate. He's not a crate play, if you will, at 5,800, but he is discounted, and where there's going to be a lot of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce ownership, I think that this is the type of week where it sets up well, and nobody's going to have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We want a piece of that Chiefs offense, right? Want a guy like this. Similar to Drake, probably going to get the football between 15, 20-ish times. I want some of it, and I certainly want it at the ownership he's going to come in at.
Momentary timeout for me to do a sanity check, because anytime I agree with Justin on a player, I feel like there's something wrong here. Kyle, Kenyon Drake, should we be worried about Kyler Murray picking up the pace as a runner against the Giants?
I wouldn't say that's a massive concern. I mean, even early in the year, we were seeing Kenyon Drake push for 20 carries weekly. I think maybe it eats into it a little bit, but it could also tune up the efficiency, because we know that running quarterbacks generally have slightly more efficient running backs, and that shouldn't be surprising. It's very difficult to both defend. It's difficult to defend Kyler Murray at all, but then when he is he holding the ball? Is he handing it off? Is he holding? And Kenyon Drake's gone. That's how fast it can happen. So I think, sure, maybe it knocks a carry or two off of Kenyon Drake, but I think a small efficiency tune-up is basically offsetting at worst.
All right, Justin, wide receivers. Quit saying things I agree with.
Yeah, at the top here, you have some tough matchups. And Tyreek Hill, he's matchup proof, right? So he is the spend as far as I'm concerned. Have some concerns about DK Metcalf going into Washington. You guys were absolutely right. I mean, this Washington defense, pound for pound tonight, is you could say that they're the best defense in the NFL. My spend at wide receiver is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. Sub 8K. I love the Eagles, if you cannot tell, this week. And DeAndre Hopkins is going to be in nearly every single one of my lineups. 11 targets last week, 13 the week before against the Rams. This is one of these weeks where DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be highly owned, from what I can see. Kyle, do you have his ownership right now? Are you looking at Hopkins' ownership, by the way?
I can pull it up if you keep talking, though. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. So DeAndre Hopkins with Hurts on the other side for sure. This is Allen Robinson's spot. We've been cracking on the Minnesota Vikings secondary all season long. I think this is a spot where, again, that proverbial carrot is dangling for Allen Robinson. He wants that big boy money. Been deprived with the quarterback play all season. Kind of getting it together with Mitch Trubisky over the last 3 weeks. He's been really, really good. I think Allen Robinson is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. He is also one of the most targeted wide receivers in the NFL. No secret in regards to Cooper Kupp and Woods. That's going to come down to ownership, but we know where the usage and the passing game goes with the Rams, and that is Cooper Kupp, that is Robert Woods, and it is over 50% of the time. So if you do a double stack with wide receivers, they're about as short shot as you can get. They're both going to be targeted around 10 times. Here's the thing.
No, fair enough.
If I dollar for dollar, Brandon Ayuk is the best wide receiver on the slate, in my opinion, particularly 6,300 without Deebo Samuel in the equation. But again, when Deebo was on the field, he was doing his thing as well. So this is another just juicy matchup for me. Kind of eeny, meeny, miny, with the Cowboys receivers, but dollar for dollar, it's going to be Michael Gallup right around 3,500 this week. So run him back in that game. If you do pay up at running back this week, which I'm not going to do, but every time I don't, you get a 40 burger out of Henry and Dalvin Cook goes off. I don't think either of them are going to hit value. There are the Russell Gages of the world and the Chad Hansons of the world that can allow you to do that, and those guys are getting targeted heavily in the absence of Will Fuller in Houston, and the Gage play is contingent on the health of Julio Jones, who I don't know that he's going to play. Does it look like he's playing this week, Bob?
It seems really dicey to me. They're calling him week to week, so I wouldn't bet on it.
All right. That's what I got. And you mentioned, Bob, T.Y. Hilton, how do you get off him now? We've been waiting all year. There was times where it was 4K right around there. It's coming. The time is coming. The time has come. Well, the time has arrived. And if you stashed him in season-long leagues, he can win you a league, and he absolutely owns the Houston Texans. And it feels like a decade. He just picks them apart every time. Underpriced as far as I'm concerned in a game that potentially could shoot out. So T.Y. Hilton, 5,500, absolutely.
All right, fair enough. Kyle, your wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bob. It seems like Julio Jones. You call him week to week. I don't think you practice on Wednesday.
Yeah.
That doesn't. That is a classic telltale signs of a guy who's not playing.
The thing about him is they will play him without practice, but I can't imagine why they want to push it right now. It just doesn't make sense to me. There's a lot of guys, though, that are getting pushed. One of the guys, Christian McCaffrey. Look, if he's healthy, we're going to see him because Matt Rule is trying to establish a culture there that he wants these guys, if they're ready to go, they're playing no matter what. I don't think the Falcons are in that same position or looking to establish that kind of culture.
Assuming Julio Jones doesn't play, Calvin Ridley 8,200, I'm basically fine paying up with anyone that isn't Tyreek Hill because Tyreek Hill at 8,800, it's difficult for him to pay off, and he's probably competing with maybe a better pass catcher than any of DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Brown, just going down the list. I mean, maybe if Julio Jones played, you could argue. I wouldn't even. I think Travis Kelce is probably one of the 5 or so best pass catchers in the league. He is the strongest competition for targets. So because of that, I think there are paths to Tyreek Hill failing, and more so than someone at the same price like DK Metcalf or at slightly cheaper like Calvin Ridley, who now has very little competition, assuming Julio Jones doesn't play. And it's a game that I've talked about wanting to target. I'm going to play a lot of variations of Tom Brady stacks. Every single one of them is going to feature a Calvin Ridley lineup because he's just jamming in 10-plus targets and 100 yards in every single game Julio Jones doesn't play. In terms of those Tampa Bay stacks, I do think Antonio Brown being the cheapest of the 3 is particularly interesting. It's been Mike Evans as the number 1 receiver since Antonio Brown returned, but Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin are tied in targets, and because Antonio Brown has a slightly higher ADOT, he actually has a little bit more air yards. So in terms of overall volume, he looks like slightly a better play, and then you adjust for the price. Antonio Brown, I think, is probably the most interesting play of the Tampa Bay wide receivers. Moving down a little bit, Brandon Ayuk, quite obvious, no other pass catchers on a team that has a good backup quarterback. I think that's good enough. And Nick Mullins, he's like a cash game lock for me at this point in the week. Terry McLaurin, if I'm talking about playing DK Metcalf, who I think is a very viable play, I mean, since week 7, when we saw the Tyler Lockett blow up, you would think if they saw that, they would say, we want more of it. Nope, since then, we have seen all DK Metcalf all the time, a 26% target share, dwarfs Tyler Lockett's, and a 42% air yard share. Not only do they throw to him a lot, but they throw to him where it counts. It's deep down the field. So I think he is a really interesting leverage play off of someone like Tyreek Hill at a very similar price point. He's going to go virtually unowned. And I get it. Tyreek Hill is in a much more interesting game environment. He probably should project to score median more points. The difference isn't that great. That at, quarters, fractions, eighths of the ownership, I'll be going to DK Metcalf. And in the same game, Terry McLaurin is one of just 2 receivers, along with Stephon Diggs, to see at least 6 targets in every single game this year. And the Seattle defense is allowing more passing yards per game than any other team has in this season and the previous 4 seasons. So 5-season stretch, no defense has looked worse. I'm going to keep going back to Terry McLaurin. I just got to keep doing it. And when I talk about leverage plays in this Chiefs team, it's got to be Sammy Watkins. I'm talking about him every single week until it hits. And if that's never, It's going to be a long 2026 season when I'm still talking about him even if he's not playing. Last week he ran a route on 80% or more, or it was a little more than 80% of Patrick Mahomes' dropbacks. That number has been hovering between 75 and 80% in every game that he finishes. He's getting a decent amount of targets too. If he goes out and scores a long touchdown, tops 100 yards, that probably takes enough away that at least one of, if not both, of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill fail to meet their prices. I'm just looking to get unique in attacking the Chiefs because at their prices, it is so difficult to stack the Chiefs, to play, these game stacks of them, even if they're just the run back on a Taysom Hill stack. The price is so difficult that I'm looking for ways to leverage that and find failures in their prices. I think Sammy Watkins is simply a great way to do that. So I think he's the best leverage of the slate. The best median projections, the best points per dollar projections are going to be Brandon Ayuk and Terry McLaurin. At the high end, give me some DK Metcalf.
Kyle going full broke back Watkins. He can't quit him. All right, tight ends, Kyle.
Tight end's terrible. Mark Andrews at 5,500. Interesting, especially given that they look like they'll be without a load of their receivers. And even when they had the receivers, he was number 1 or number 2 in targets almost every single week, and he wasn't dropping all of his targets, unlike Marquise Brown, he who should not be named anymore, given, I know he scored a long touchdown, but some egregious drops once again. So Mark Andrews should be the number 1 receiver for his team by a considerable margin. His target share number should look something like a Travis Kelce. Obviously, his team doesn't project to pass nearly as much. They actually have a higher implied team total. So if they just happen to get in the red zone and instead of running on a given play, they throw and that play is the touchdown, Mark Andrews could be, he's one of the only tight ends, maybe honestly the only tight end on the slate, who I think really has a realistic chance of outscoring Travis Kelce straight up. It's not a great chance, but it's realistic. No one else, I think, really has that opportunity. I think at best they're doing it on a points per dollar basis. So for that reason, Mark Andrews at 5,500. Justin talked about playing some Lamar Jackson. I also like that. I just figured I'd save it till now. Lamar Jackson plus Mark Andrews stacks are really interesting. If you need to save money, Jordan Akins at 2,100. He's getting a decent amount of looks. He loves dropping those targets, but given that they really have one receiver who has a pedigree, dude, it's so bad. I mean, he lost the one in the sun. What are you going to do about that? But even on the Thanksgiving slate, he dropped 2 would-be touchdowns. I think one of them was defended well, so I guess you don't blame that one on him. But the other one, the guy, please. But what I care about are targets, and I care about targets from Deshaun Watson at, I believe, 2,800. Jordan Akins is a pretty solid punt play. Rob Gronkowski last week, I think, was priced pretty egregiously. Let me see if I can have you. He's like up to 4,800 last week. He comes back down 600 to 42. I think at that price point, he's viable. I don't love him, but I've talked about playing Tampa Bay. Gronk makes some sense there. He's still got some playmaking ability. Lastly, the only tight end I think who is like a very solid play in his own right. I talk about, Mark Andrews and Gronk because I like their quarterbacks or I like their game environments. Dallas Goedert is simply the number 1 receiver on his team. I know his team, sort of like we talk about with Mark Andrews, is probably a team that projects to run more now that they have a quarterback who could lead the league in rushing on any single week, at least among quarterbacks. I don't care. At 3,900, I believe. 3,900. At 3,900, if you're getting a number 1 receiver on a team at tight end, a horrible, egregious, atrocious position, why would you not play that?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I don't know whether I'm just more comfortable agreeing with you or my last season-long league in the playoffs needs Mark Andrews to come through. I think it's the latter, but I might like agreeing with you more than I agree with Justin. Justin, your turn.
I'm looking at Travis Kelce's numbers last week, and I was trying to stack it up against that 2011 Gronk season. And we haven't seen a season from a tight end quite like this. I mean, he is, like Kyle said, forget about him being a tight end. He's getting the ball from the best quarterback in the game. This is a season to remember. It'll be interesting to see where it ends up. At 8K, it's a steep price, but man, don't view him as a tight end. View him as a wide receiver, right? I mean, that's what we have to do at this point in time. So I will have some Travis Kelce. I don't know what his ownership is going to be at tonight. People are going to be skeptical at 8K, but I don't think you should be. Again, he's going to have to drop 30 to pay off that value as well. I think Andrews is in that spot. The only problem with Mark Andrews is he doesn't get a ton of targets, and he is somewhat touchdown dependent. I do like the price tag, though, and I will agree 100% with Kyle as far as if anybody's going to kiss what Travis Kelce can do this week, it's going to be Andrews. Although Logan Thomas a couple weeks ago, boys, against the Pittsburgh Steelers had one of those ceiling games in Pittsburgh. This is a guy, you talk about, like Kyle just mentioned, Dallas Goedert. Same type of deal. I mean, minus Terry McLaurin, who's come back to earth a little bit. LT is that guy. As far as the targets are there every week, I think 10, 15 points, right in that range. They're dogs to Seattle. And I think that regardless of the quarterback, he'll serve as that kind of proverbial safety blanket for whoever's playing quarterback. So Logan Thomas, 4K, 8, 9 targets. You hope that they're playing catch up and he just gets peppered. But if you can do it against the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think he can drop 20 against anybody. And Seattle, as we've seen all season, struggles in that department. I think Dallas Goedert's another guy, like Kyle said. Mention Jalen Hurts. Who are you going to use Jalen Hurts with? You're not going to use him with Rieger. You're not going to use him with Alshon Jeffrey. You're certainly not going to use him with Zach Ertz. Ward, you're not going to go there. So my Jalen Hurts stacks are going to be with Miles Sanders, and I'm going to free up some cap with Dallas Goedert at 3,900. Another guy, 6, 7, 8, 9 targets. We know what he's capable of doing. And he can also be that safety blanket for the rookie Jalen Hurts. So tonight, a little bit of Kelsey. Mark Andrews is growing on me, but again, somewhat touchdown dependent. I do like the fact that Hollywood is not playing. We saw what Mark Andrews did last year. I think that the nonverbal communication with Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson is as good as it gets. I will go there. And I will also have Logan Thomas. No necessity. You know what? I'll give you one more. And he is popping in 100% of optimal lineups at this point in time. Cole Kmet in Chicago. I think that love Mitch Trubisky, love Allen Robinson. Give me some at 3K. People are comparing him to George Kittle. I think that's a little bit crazy, but if you saw
who the hell
how
is comparing him to George Kittle? Show me that person. I will fight them.
I think it was Fred Smirlis.
It might have been. It was Jared Stidham's uncle, Gary. But at 3K, so the usage has to go somewhere in Chicago. And I think that, look, maybe they have a tight end not named Jimmy Graham, who's been a shell of himself, but 7 targets back-to-back weeks at 3K. I'm going to have him for more reasons than one. And I'm going to have him with Mitch Trubisky based on the price, based on the matchup. And I think that there's a level of comfortability there. So it's going to be Kelsey, obviously, a little bit. It's going to be Mark Andrews, Thomas, and Cole Kmet at this point with some Dallas Goedert and my Jalen Hurts stacks.
So I guess, just to wash the Cole Kmet out of my mouth here. Travis Kelce question first, Kyle. Can we remember, and it's basically because Kittle is out, right? But can you remember a season in recent memory with a player at a single position who offered you the leverage that Kelce does?
I mean, I don't know. I think Lamar Jackson last year, truly, I mean, it was, I think on a points per game basis was the greatest fantasy season for a quarterback ever. I mean, that is close, but I do think it's the disparity that is so much different there, especially with the way that quarterbacks can typically have a lot of decent weeks. You just don't find the volume with Kelce that you find with anyone else. He's close. I would imagine maybe would have to look at who was doing well that season, but the LT was 27 or something touchdowns. Maybe that season could have been, but I wasn't even playing fantasy football. That was too young.
You're going back.
I'm trying to think of because I just randomly look up who were the best players in any given season or something.
Priest Holmes and some Marshall Faulk years.
Yeah, and
Larry
all
Johnson had a.
Yeah, the problem is all of these players probably had a good on that season, on the LT season. I'm sure there was a good RB2. There was Darren Waller is good, but he is just not Travis Kelce. And then the number 3 with Mark Andrews not playing well, largely because of Lamar Jackson and no George Kittle, essentially. The number 3 is egregious. So no, I think this is maybe the biggest advantage of any one player at their position relative to the rest of their position.
Other than Cole
Kmet. Who is number 3?
It's probably T.J. Hawkinson. It's been Hawkinson.
Yeah, I think Hawkinson is it.
This is why it's the sea of mediocrity.
Speaking of that, what do your defenses look like, Justin?
I might pay up. I might pay all the way up for the Rams at home against the Jets, 4,500. I know. By the way, Kyle, great call on the Dallas Cowboys. Could not go there, and they went bananas. You said they were. There. I couldn't, and they went off. And I was thinking about you guys all of Sunday, so I might pay up for the Rams at 4,500. I know it's crazy. It depends on my build. but I'm going to have Cam Akers and correlate that with the Rams. You get where I'm going there. I feel like it's safe. I feel like the upside is there. And I feel like I can get 15 points and walk away. If I'm paying down a little bit, the 49ers are projecting really well at Dallas. Something about the Cowboys offense and watching Dalton a couple weeks ago, a little more comfortable. The truth is the weaponry just scares me in Dallas at home. It does. I don't think defenses are what they used to be. And I think that any offense, and especially Andy Dalton, seasoned veteran with all that talent around, could go off. So a little hesitant on the 49ers, but I get the play for sure. I also like the Arizona Cardinals, who are all projecting well. I like Jalen Hurts. I think he's a rookie. He's going to make mistakes on the road. The Cardinals did their thing against the Giants, 2,900. Completely fine going there. Gentlemen, one ballsy play would be the Washington football team at home against the Seattle Seahawks. You guys are right. I think this is as good as it gets. Chase Young's going to have his work cut out. But if this team makes the playoffs, it's because of the defense. I love the price. Doing it all, picks, force and fumbles, sacks. So at 2,600, nobody's going to be on, and people are going to look at Russell Wilson just lighting them up. I don't know that that's going to happen. I think you can get 10 out of I was going to call them the Redskins, the football team at home, 2,600. Love the price.
Yeah, fair enough. Kyle?
Yeah, I don't hate football team. I think it was like the Giants a few weeks ago. They were even cheaper, but they're also not as good of a defense. And Russell Wilson takes a decent amount of sacks because they've been more aggressive. He's thrown a little more interceptions this year. If you need to save some money, I don't hate them, but the problem is for me at the same price, 2,700. The Cowboys. Once again, I'm just looking to target bad quarterbacks. That's all I want, man. I don't care about I don't care about how the offensive line matches up versus the defensive line. I don't care about cornerback versus receiver matchups. Tell me a bad quarterback is going to trot onto the field, and I'll take it. And I don't even think Nick Mullins is terrible, but I'd call him generously, I'd call him aggressive. More likely, he makes a lot of mistakes. He's thrown an interception on 3.5% of his career attempts. He's taken a sack on 5.7% of his dropbacks. Those numbers are both, especially in terms of the interceptions, that's pretty terrible. At best, he's aggressive. At worst, he's actually just bad, and most backups are bad. They hold that job for a reason. So I like the WFT call. I also think, though, in the same price range, the Cowboys, just anytime you get to play against a quarterback who's going to make a lot of mistakes, we know that from his entire body of work as an NFL player, I'm just going to keep going back to it. Cowboys 2,700 is my favorite defense by far.
Yeah. That trip to the East Coast for Seattle, always worrisome. All right, guys, I think that's about it. Everyone should hit up the website. Check it out. We realize that not everyone is playing as much season long, and so you're fewer eyes there. So we really focus on the DFS. And for those who are still in the mix, it's more important than ever. So tons of content, news, rankings. Kyle's rankings are up right now. The staff rankings will be up shortly. Plenty of DFS content. Justin's digging in the DFS crates will be up soon. I recommend reading it without reservation. How's that, Justin? Was that a good plug? All right, and
that's nice. That was nice.
You're welcome. That's the best I got. Kyle's cash game and tournament lineup breakdowns available now as well. My DFS 3 and Out will be up on Friday or so. So check everything out. Tons of stuff. You're gonna love it. Video, audio, everything at footballdiehards.com.